Hello, welcome to my channel, The Finance Sister. I'm so glad you're here. This is a channel where we talk about everything related to money and having a balanced lifestyle. Before we go any further, please go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell button so that you get notifications on all future videos. So let's start talking briefly about 5 different life events where you're probably going to want to pause paying off debt aggressively or possibly altogether aside from your minimum payments. For most of us in our 20s and 30s, it's going to be student loans that we have, right? So if you are potentially thinking of going back to school or you are still in college, then this is a great time to not be paying on debt aggressively. If you already have enough set aside to where you know that you're not going to take on any more debt, that's fine. Go ahead and chunk away at the interest that may be already accruing on some of your loans. But this is not the time to be putting everything that you have in your paycheck towards your debt. You need to make sure that you have all of your tuition, living expenses covered before that period starts where you have to pay back your loans. And if there is any chance at all that you're going to have to take on more debt, then just don't put any more towards debt. Keep that in savings so that you have it ready to go if something comes up. If you're someone who has a lot of debt right now, or you're in the thick of it and paying off debt aggressively, go watch our video in how my husband and I paid off $67,000 worth of student loans in 15 months. But that was actually spread out over the span of 2.5 years because we paused paying off debt aggressively for over a year in order to save up money to cash flow his grad school, move across states from Oregon to Texas and back. The second life event, while it's very exciting, is definitely a time where you're probably going to want to pause paying off debt, and that is having a baby. So obviously these costs are definitely going to vary depending on your health insurance, but the average cost of having a baby vaginally, not with a C-section, and with insurance is approximately $7,300 in the state of Oregon. I will link below to the Business Insider link that goes state by state what you will actually pay with out of pocket and with insurance average costs for a normal, no complicated birth delivery. My husband and I are actually currently pregnant. I'm 6 months pregnant, and we chose to not actually pause paying off debt because we were in a situation where we were paying approximately $300 a month in rent. We were renting a room from family, and we knew that we were going to be able to still pay off all of our remaining debt and have an emergency fund built before we would be having the baby. Also, we knew that we have a high deductible health plan and our HSA contributions would be able to cover our max out-of-pocket expenses. So that's the only reason why we didn't pause paying off debt. Other costs associated with having the baby is obviously setting up the nursery, making sure that everything is ready and set to go for when the baby comes, but also just making sure that you have a pile of cash for if things do go wrong, if there's anything that the baby or you needs in terms of extra medical care, or if you need to stay at home longer with the baby and you're not able to take as much maternity leave. Having money in the bank like that will be able to take the pressure off of you to go back to work as soon as possible if you have enough to cover and you're not relying on going back to work for that income. The third life event is moving. So moving can be extremely exhausting and also fairly expensive, just depending on where you're moving, how you do it, and how much stuff that you have. According to the American Moving Storage Association, the average in-state move costs people approximately $1,200, and moving to a different state is going to be approximately $5,600. And I'll put a link to that below if you want to see more details on that. And obviously, this could be a lot less if you're doing the move entirely by yourself and you're not taking a ton of stuff with you. Definitely factor that into how much that's going to cost, but better be safe than sorry to just pause for a couple months if that's all that you need in order to make sure that you're not taking on more debt during the move. Aside from the move itself, there's costs like deposits if you're moving from a rental to another rental and you don't actually get your deposit back in time to sign the lease on the next one, or if you are moving, actually buying a house, then you're going to need to cover closing costs and obviously the down payment if you don't already have that, which I would not personally recommend buying a house if you still are in debt. Plus, let's not forget that moving is exhausting and you end up eating out a lot more because of the convenience. And I definitely would know this since I have moved approximately 9 or 10 times in my life, and the last 4 have been in the last 3 years. Number 4 is if you are anticipating a job loss and you are fairly confident that it's actually going to happen. I would not say that you need to pause paying off debt if things are looking a little bit unsure or you're just feeling a little bit uneasy. That's not solid enough reason to pause paying off debt. But if it's something where you have talked about your current situation with your employer and you have been given a heads up, then that's absolutely a time where you will want to pause paying off debt, get aggressive about looking for another job, and only start making payments again once you have another job that is reliable, steady, and you know that you're not going to take on any debt to front your living expenses. Number 5 is if there is a family emergency. So heaven forbid this would ever happen, but if there is a death in the family or if there is an illness where you need to be financially involved and either take care of them in a financial way or with your time, and that requires you to sacrifice working or at least decreasing the amount of hours that you're spending at work, this is a time where you're going to want to pause paying off debt or at least reassess exactly how much you can be paying towards debt to where it's not going to be a stressor and you know absolutely for sure that you won't need to put money on a credit card or be late on bills if you decide to keep going as aggressively as you have been. So those are the main categories, and everything else in life, honestly, you should be able to still be paying off debt aggressively, but factor it into your budget. So things that are not an emergency to where you don't need to stop paying off debt are things like insurance that comes up, medical expenses that you already know that you're going to need, like dentist appointments or like oral care, whatever, things like that. Those are not emergency situations to where you need to stop paying off debt. You should be able to look at your budget and factor in all the things throughout the year that you're going to need to take care of.